We're ready.
Thank
Ready
you,
to speak.
everybody, for joining us tonight. I'm Lisa Rodriguez, and I have Mel here with me. Say hi, Mel. We started WomenUpLive as a forum for women to share their inspirational stories on overcoming adversity in all forms. We believe that when we share our stories, we do so to help lift each other up and to remind ourselves that we are not alone. Today, we are featuring Melissa Heathers, author of Dear Ego, Dear Heart, a poetic tale of the war within. Her story begins when she was a teen, faced with depression, anxiety, suicide, the same issues that many of us have experienced growing up. Today, we will learn how she overcame her hardships, experienced miracles, and ultimately was given a second chance to shine her love and light on all of us. In honor of Melissa's path, we've titled today's episode From Darkness to Light. We feel her story will resonate with many of you. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, Women Up Live. I am so honored to be here today and share my story with you and your viewers. My book, Dear Ego, Dear Heart, is a poetic letter to each part of my life's journey, which got me to this point. It features the struggles that many of us have faced and the internal war within each of us, which often creates like this fierce battle we have between our head and our heart and the emotions that we feel in our soul. It's really about, life's tribulations and trials and the ups and downs, the journey to find peace and forgiveness and finding our purpose. So my story begins the darkest point of my life, and I've never shared it with people outside of my immediate family. So I'm honored to share it today here with you. At 14, I attempted to commit suicide. And in that experience, I had a near death experience, also known as an NDE. When I was 14, I tried to take my own life by swallowing a ton of pills and alcohol. There was a lot of it in my household, so I had very easy access to it. And I ended up on life support for 2 days. Within that time, I had an NDE. And I literally remember my soul kind of leaving my body, and I was lying dead on the hospital table when my soul left my body. And I was hovering over myself, maybe about 8 feet or so away. I could see everything. My lifeless body on the table. I was hooked up to all sorts of, breathing machines, and I could see my doctors, my nurses, the family. When I was in that kind of experience, my energy or soul, as some may call it, was literally like gone from my body. I felt like this detachment, but I also felt very free in that detachment. I could tell my energy, it was like translucent in nature. You can really see it. And it was like a peaceful feeling. I was able to kind of observe the entire room in this newfound energy. And I felt very calm within it. It was kind of like I don't know how many out there are Buddhists or know anything about Buddhist philosophy, but I was literally kind of the observer of everything. During this experience, I remember like floating and hovering. And I went down this hall and I saw my mom sitting in the waiting room, and she was upset and crying. And in my darkest hour, I remember her looking up towards a light, which was a lamp shade, and she found light there. And when she looked up on this lamp, she found a rosary. She took the rosary off of the lamp and put it into her purse, and she kept it. Kind of shortly after that, after my hovering and exploring and being the observer, everything, it went pitch black. And I thought, oh man, I'm in darkness. I'm going to hell because, trying to take your own life in the Bible is a cardinal sin. And out of nowhere, I heard this calm, gentle voice say, it's not your time. And then literally a strong force of energy like pushed me back into my body. And when I went back into my body, I just felt darkness like all around, and I was falling into darkness, and it kind of turned into light. And as it was turning into light, I was coming out of my coma. So after that, I couldn't speak for a few days because I had taken pills and they had to pump my stomach. And once I was able to speak, I thought like I was hallucinating. And I asked my mom, like, where's the rosary that she found? And she literally pulled it out of her purse, and amazed. And to this day, that rosary is still in our family. It is a symbol of the miracle that was granted that
Mhm.
day. I have it. I just,
Oh, wow.
my mom just passed away.
I'm so
So
sorry.
I, I inherited the rosary, and she kept it all these years. It's a little broken, a little worn out, but here it is.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Thank you. I will keep it forever.
So, Melissa, if I can ask real quickly, what led you to attempt suicide at that age? I think this is something that might resonate with some of our viewers. So if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm appreciating the platform to share my story, my voice, and there was a lot of darkness in my life and a lot of things that I didn't really understand till I was an adult. So I just kind of want to back the bus up a little bit and explain my background. So I grew up as an only child between my parents. I was the youngest of three half siblings. And I'm just going to be totally vulnerable here. I was the product of an affair. So my parents had an affair, and they each left their spouse to be together. So my sister from my mom's first marriage is totally disabled, and she lived with us at the family home. And though this girl, she's was and is our sweetest earth angel. Like, she's so expressive through her big brown eyes, and I just love her so deeply. But unfortunately, when you are a child of a disabled sibling, there's a lot of neglect that surrounds that. And my mom was really quite not capable of caring for more than just her, truthfully. And I don't throw this word around lightly. My mom was a vulnerable narcissist, and through my childhood, I really walked on eggshells my whole life. There was a lot of like expectations my parents had. It was very be seen and not heard. My mom didn't have the space for my feelings because she was a narcissist. And yeah, it was just, I literally walked on eggshells. I know for myself, I had some work to do around that, but that was kind of my childhood. And as for my dad's siblings, it's really quite sad. I didn't know I had two other half siblings till I was 12. I found some Christmas presents under the tree one year for them, and I was like, "Who are these?" And it's kind of how I found out, but they weren't a part of my life. And I didn't meet them until my parents got married when I was 14. It was, can you say, very awkward. And I remember in the wedding, like being so happy that my parents were getting married, but really when I met them, like feeling their sadness and disappointment and maybe their abandonment, like, but I didn't really know what that was. I was only 14, and I was very socially conditioned and not who I am today. So I didn't really understand it. But that was a pivotal moment because I knew I was a product of an affair, and I knew it wasn't right that, these other children weren't a part of my life. And in that time, I really started to hold the shame and guilt of being a bastard child. And, like, I internalized that I tore this family apart. Again, like, I didn't really fully understand it, but I knew those feelings were inside of me, and I was holding them. In my personal childhood, between like my parents, there was a lot of neglect, and I was left alone a lot. My mom cared for my sister, like I said, and she really just didn't have the space for me. And I think when you're a narcissist, you don't have the space for a lot of people. And caring for a disabled child who can't speak for themselves is probably the perfect parenting role for my mom. My dad, he was really the only one to hold space for me. He tried, but he couldn't really hold too much because my mom really needed him for everything. She was a narcissist and he was an empath, and that's kind of how that cycle worked in my family. And if I'm being honest, like I sensed it, and other people have come to me, and I really do feel like there was a little bit of jealousy between the relationship that my dad had with me. Even like throughout my life, comments have been made by my mom about that relationship, and it didn't come from a good place. It came, from jealousy. It's really the only way to explain it. During, family time or family dinners, there was none of that. I would eat alone in the basement. I was alone most of my childhood, and the reason for that is my sweet sister. She didn't like kids, and thank God it was just little kids and not me. I maybe internalized that when I was little, but I know as my adult self that she really, loves me and loves people. So when I visit her now, we smile and we laugh, and I know we're sharing stories through our souls, through our eyes, and she's completely nonverbal and can't walk or talk. And I always told myself as a child, one day when our souls meet in a different realm, like she's seen it all. She's gonna have so many stories for me, and I truly can't wait for that time. Also, like we had support staff, like personal support workers that would come in, and God bless their souls. We've had one for 35 years. She still visits and works with my sister to this day. They come into the house to give parents of disabled children a respite or relief, but even with that relief, I wasn't really a part of their journey, and I was very isolated and left alone, unfortunately. And although there wasn't physical abuse in my house, it was very full of neglect and isolation and abandonment, and that really plays on a child. They don't understand it. And I thought that was my norm. When you really research what emotions come from neglect, they are the exact same as abuse, unfortunately. So those are the feelings that were dividing me from myself and segregating and that I was internalizing. Although that's like my background, I would say the divide within myself really started at a much earlier age. I'm realizing, oh my God, I'm a bastard child and I broke this family up. Like, how awful. At 3, I was very badly sexually abused. That carried on for about 4 to 5 years. And I remember the first time it happened, and it's like imprinted in my brain. And I was disassociated from me. Like I remember the heat that day. And after that happened, I came around the corner and I was still very dissociated, and I was like a zombie. And I just kind of stood there like a zombie. And my mom, I sensed it. I felt it. She knew that something was wrong. And she just kind of looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you?" And, I'm frozen. I'm 3 years old. How do you articulate that? You don't even know what's happening to your body. And I just couldn't speak. And she literally just walked away. And I know in that moment is when I felt unsafe with her, and always felt unsafe with her until the day she passed a couple months ago. So, it's from in that experience when you have sexual abuse and it's not realized. a lot of children have extremely bad behaviors, and I did. And instead of a parent realizing this behavior is not right for that child at this age, she would just blame me and shame me and tell me how terrible of a child was all the way up till adulthood. Like I remember telling her, in my adults, and she's like, "Well, it's your fault. You should have told me." So instead of trying to like love and help me and support me and figure out what was going on, it was shame and guilt. And like I said, these were pivotal times when I was a child. And I know that's, when the self-hatred and the big divide from my heart and who I was happened. And it's sad that it was so young, but it was what it was. But since that time, I have, guardian angels, whether it's my soul or actual guardian angels, that kind of help me overcome the guilt of this, traumatic experience and time in my life. And, whatever the force is, this angel is really given me darkness to have life. And it's really like my guiding force that they've bestowed upon me.
Wow. Melissa, thank you so much for sharing that unbelievably heartfelt and personal story. And I can't even imagine having to go through that. Sexual abuse, really forces children in particular to turn inward, and it, like as you stated, it caused you to disassociate and become disconnected from everybody. So as a result, I'm guessing that's what led to your troubled teenage years, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did your near-death experience help you better cope with this trauma? Do you
Well,
think?
I would, one would like to think that, you're 14 and you do this and you come out of it and you're alive and you're healthy, that you would have that like shift in your mind. But unfortunately, no, I didn't learn from my near death experience at that time. And I spent the next probably 2 decades, 20 years cycling from one bad behavior to another. I experienced, abuse and neglect in other relationships, and they were lessons. And during this time of not learning in my NDE, I was really in a self-sabotage mode. I don't think because I didn't have, the parental structure of them being able to understand like this behavior, I wasn't able to become resilient and understand why I did this, terrible, terrible act. So I just self-sabotage, making one poor choice after another. And my head and my heart they were just not aligned for so long. And every time I would try to go inward, because things would resonate with me when I was a child and a teenager, and, Oprah and her Soulful Sundays, they would resonate with me. But when I would try and go inward, my ego from my social condition just made my head fight harder and hate myself and keep myself in my shame and my unworthiness for years. It's like my thoughts didn't want my heart and who I was authentically to matter. So for many, many years, I really struggled to find my way.
So then what would you say is that pivotal moment that really led you to change the circumstance, to change your narrative and turn everything around?
Oh, not so many, like so many darknesses to really strange, parenting experience in my own, like being a mother. Um, but there's like several life events that led me to the journey of self-discovery. And as hard as they were, I'm so grateful for them. Like one of the first thing is like I had to recognize my behaviors to placating to a narcissistic mother and my desires to seek her love. Like I really thought that's what love was. If I act this way and my feelings don't matter, then she'll love me. And in that, I did everything my parents wanted, everything. I'm not the version of myself today 20 years ago. It was very placating because, again, like that's what I thought love was. However, through my life, it actually caused me to become like hardened and analytical because I was disassociating from myself and detaching from myself. So I had to be hardened. And I just like kept disassociating and disconnecting more and more from myself in order to be loved from people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and they didn't. Another huge, breaking point was going through a car accident. It was a pivotal point in my life. I was feeling blindness or fearing blindness. So basically, in my car accident, I hit my head and I had a traumatic brain injury and concussion. And where I hit my head, I hit it like right in my peripheral vision. And I did almost go blind, and they were preparing for me for that. And that was a very stressful time in my life. It was at that time, I kind of had to make a choice. Do I listen to the doctors and heal myself and love myself so I could love others? And I made that choice. But unfortunately, in making that choice, you're not placating to others anymore. You're taking care of yourself and you're loving yourself, which caused, kind of in parallel, my divorce. It was a very, very messy divorce. And it left me feeling very, lost and broken and sad. While I was going through the healing process of trying to care for myself and not go blind and taking all these therapies. But, they were working in tandem together. I was like shedding, that darkness so that I could find my light and learn how to love myself. And I knew in the divorce and from my past and from the car accident, I really wanted to break generational trauma that my parents couldn't break. And I knew that I never wanted to put those hardships that my parents put on me upon my kids. And I wanted to love my kids unconditionally. So again, it was kind of a pivotal point where I realized I could either do the work and heal, or I could live in self-pity. And self-pity for me, that isn't no. Like no, it's like my biggest fear. Like my mom would wallow in self-pity, and people would feel sorry for her because she had this disabled child, and she always kind of used it to, not with good intentions. So I was just like, absolutely not. So I did the work, and with each, healing process and program that I participated in, and there were many, from like the doctor side to the spiritual side, it really did help me take one step closer into becoming whole. And like that divide that I had within myself was starting to close, like the gap was starting to close, and I was finding my worth and my peace and the love for myself. So it's through those darkest points in my life, between fearing blindness from the car accident and going through a divorce, when I knew that I really had to heal my heart. And when you go through a transcendence and you're healing, forgiveness is a huge, huge part of it. It's not necessarily for the other person, it's for yourself. And I really had to forgive my parents and dig really deep. And I did. And I had to forgive, my failed marriage and dig really deep. And I did. And I also had to like forgive myself for being that version of myself, and, not knowing it, and how what I brought into that relationship when I was that version of myself. And that was the only true way I could really heal myself. And I also, found I had to lean into the vulnerability and get soft and break that hardness so that I could love others. I needed to love myself first before I could love others. That saying is true. You have to love yourself first before you can love others. So, as a result of that, I really feel like I left my marriage from a place of love, and that was to find self-love. So gratefully, even though it was like very hard and emotional for everybody involved, my ex-husband and I can happily say like we have a great relationship. Our kids love our relationship. Our partners, we all get along very well. We all raise our kids, together in partnership. And I couldn't have done that without, wanting to do it from good intentions, from a place of love, but not really knowing it at that time so that I could love myself.
So now, of the treatments and therapies that you did, was there a particular one or maybe more than one that you really connected with that helped you get reestablished, or I mean, gosh, actually found your joy in your life?
Oh, there were, Lisa, Mel, so many therapies. It was so crazy. And it's crazy to think I was doing this all in a divorce and trying to support my kids emotionally. And my mom was, terminally ill at that time. And I had my handicapped sister. It was a crazy time. And I'm talking like I did physiotherapy, massage therapy, osteopath, vision therapy was a huge one. I did that for 5 years, just because my vision was so bad. Like I was wearing contacts and glasses to see, and special lenses at work called prism lenses. That was great. And that was the start of it. But then it kind of transcended into like the spiritual awakening and my soul awakening. And that was like the Reiki and the yoga and the meditation and the retreats and, all that really good thing. I wouldn't say one more than the other, but each one of them took me a step closer to healing. And as I became a step closer to healing, I became closer to God, or the universe and source. And I was hearing those whispers to me, those nudges. And I had them when I was younger too. I just like ignored them for half my life. That's okay. And those nudges were to, write my story. My angel, my guardian was telling me, write your healing story. And I did. And writing my story really was my full closure to put me in alignment with myself. And I'm really grateful that words came through me, how they came through me at the right time in my life. So,
well, and I love that you mentioned, the catalyst that led you to actually write your story and compelled you to on your journey to helping heal other people. So, like, how did you start the new journey? How did that unfold for you?
It was another 5 years before I actually started writing my story. I would journal stuff and I would have, like ideas and insights as I was, ascending into this new spiritual realm and this new version of myself. It really was just kind of jotting down notes of big struggles in life and all my pains and my gains. I found it the most healing process. So it finally really did allow me to become whole and align with myself and love myself wholeheartedly. And, for the first time in my life, I published my book at Christmas. So I just turned 44. Like I finally truly felt aligned with my head and my heart. And I don't think there's ever going back. Like when you're going through a healing process, there's 3 steps forward and 5 steps back, because that's what the healing process is. But my book just gave me alignment, and it was my truth. It was my story, and it's poetic and it might not be everybody's thing, and that's okay. But it's who I am to my core, and the struggle that I had between my head and my heart for so many years.
Melissa, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. We really appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability in sharing this story with us and our viewers as well. If you could just real quickly summarize the journey with one word, what would you say?
Resilience.
I love that. So tell us more about where viewers can find your book.
So you can find my book at www.soulsecrets.ca. It's kind of my web page with my book and my blogs and my photography, but it gives you a direct link to Amazon to purchase it, or you can purchase it at amazon.com. You just plunk in Dear Ego, Dear Heart by Melissa Heathers, and you can find it there.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. We are so honored to have you be our featured guest speaker today. You opened yourself up, you made yourself vulnerable, but the reality is that there are others who have experienced very similar circumstances. And by you sharing your story, I promise you, you have, I'm sure, healed others, given them the light and the hope and the inspiration to make peace with their past as well. So thank you again. And thank you to our viewers for being here. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Like us and share our video. Our website is up at WomenUpLive, where you can schedule your interview if you'd like. You can pose us questions. We appreciate your support. Please ask us any questions. And thank you again. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.